Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a cacophonous Charles Coulombe.
Cacophonous.
Cacophonous, yes.
As in making cacophonous. Is it making really annoying sounds that are really annoying? Is it like that?
Yes, like the opposite of harmonious.
I see. So basically, the impression being given here is that I am not a harmonious person.
Right.
That I am, cacophonous. I have no other way to put it.
Yeah.
Lots of annoying noises and sounds and all that.
Yeah. Not pleasant noises. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Okay. I'm good with that.
That was user submitted. That was submitted from Zach, faithful patron. So thank you for that submission, Zach.
If he a patron, you know what? If you're a paying pal, whatever words you want, you get. I've worked at Tumblr House long enough to know I do as I'm told.
That's right.
Please don't fire me, boss. Please don't fire.
Oh man. So.
It's a hard life.
So what's new, Charles? What's going on in your world?
Oh, in my world. Well, I'll tell you what. Last week, Easter week, we had snow 3 times.
That's pretty cool. That's fun.
It was extremely cool.
Did you get in the snowball fights?
No, it didn't. It didn't last long. It fell. It powdered everything white and then vanished again. But today and yesterday, today is actually the first day I haven't had a Westcott since the autumn.
That's true.
Yeah. It was warm today, and yesterday it was, and then on Wednesday, Tuesday, and Monday, we had snow and it was very cold. April, they say in Austria, is a tricky month.
Why?
Because it goes back and forth with the weather. And also we had a Candlemas was very, very warm and pleasant. And you know the old Scots saying, if Candlemas day be warm and clear, the half of winter's to come and mair. So that's probably why we're having late snows.
Okay.
That's Groundhog Day.
I love the movie.
Yeah, well, sometimes living in Austria can be like the movie, but, I love Austria. It's wonderful over here.
I love America. It's wonderful over here.
Yes, but you see, I know both places. You only know one. And I love both places. So there.
Okay, wow, you really showed me.
I did.
All right.
And also, I'm trapped here by COVID.
Okay.
By reason of COVID, I am in exile from my native land.
You're an expatriate, and you went there by choice. You were not exiled.
Aren't we clever? An expatriate. I like that. That's cute.
Like Hemingway. Right? Hemingway went to Europe. What?
I thought you meant expatriate as in former patriot.
No, not former patriot.
I was accused of being an expatriate.
No.
Yes. I'm not kidding, somebody sent me a note saying you knew what was going to happen in the States and you got out while the going was good. Not a joke. You're an expatriate. Person who's bitter.
Well, I mean, you knew what was going to happen, but you quite clearly, had a special opportunity to get a master's degree in theology, a free ride. I mean, I
don't know about free, but yeah, I certainly did that. But I didn't know what was going to happen with the States, that it was going to turn into such a fireball of fun.
Yeah. So
I wonder what I'll find of Los Angeles when I get back. But sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. And I have other news.
Yeah.
News we reveal to our patrons, but I shall reveal to our audience.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen and ladies, I have some internal medical problems that are rather concerning. So I have to have them checked out this coming week, and I would very much appreciate it if you would give me your prayers, etc. Yeah. As soon as I know something, you'll know something, because, of course, if I'm in good shape, broadcasts continue. If I go off to the morgue, other than perhaps the state funeral with 10 people allowed for COVID, of course. What? Well, they're not going to look. Even the Duke of Edinburgh is only getting 30 tops because of COVID.
Wait, 30 what?
People, more 30 mourners at his funeral.
Okay.
It was planned to have 800, but because of COVID, I mean, they planned for 800 mourners, but because of the COVID, it's only going to be 30.
That's sad. That's actually really sad.
Yeah, it is. But this has been a very, very, very sad, obnoxious time all around. COVID's not nearly as much fun as we thought it would be back at the lab in Wuhan.
I wonder if you could even... I wonder, they should get like the best mathematicians and economists in the world and actually ascribe a number to the damage that is dealt, the monetary, like fiscal. I wonder if, it's easily trillions, but like how many trillions? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Anyhow, okay, so, did you want to talk about the Duke at all? Because that's a blow,
Yeah, it is kind of a blow, and I know that a lot, certainly there have been a lot of rather annoyed and not to say autistic comments about the Duke from Catholics on Twitter and the internet and so on. And I understand he was initiated into the Masonic Lodge when he was young. Though he wasn't much of a practitioner of it. The Masons are claiming him, of course, for their own. But his son did not join the order, and that by itself speaks volumes about what the Duke thought. You see, traditionally, the senior member of the royal family, who would be the Prince of Wales, has been the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of England. But Prince Charles refused the dubious honor, and it went instead to his cousin, the Duke of Kent. That's very funny, because the Duke of Kent's wife converted to Catholicism, as did his younger son.
This is all complicated.
I know! And life isn't supposed to be complicated. I get it. That's too bad.
Can you just tell me who I'm supposed to like and hate?
Yes, hate bad people, like good people.
Are they bad people? Are they bad people, though?
Are there bad people? Oh, they're bad people.
No,
yeah.
Are they bad people?
Depends on how you define bad. It's interesting that the Duke of Edinburgh was born Greek Orthodox, became Anglican to marry the Queen, and returned. What?
He was Greek Orthodox?
Yeah, he was born a Prince of Greece.
Wow. Okay, cool. All right. That's too bad he converted to Anglicanism.
Well, but what I was about to say was that when the Church of England started ordaining women, he returned to Greek Orthodoxy. So it'll be very interesting to see if his funeral rites have any Greek Orthodox participation or not.
Do you think he would have stipulated? Or is something like that because it's so high up out of his control?
Let's see, that's what I can't tell you. I wouldn't be surprised either way. I mean, it's like so much else in life, you can't tell until it's done.
So he went to a Greek Orthodox Mass? Alone?
That's
interesting. Right? Did the Queen go with him,
I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, we know, and he would go to Anglican church with her at Christmas and things like that.
Where's all the tabloids and report? Where are all the reporters? I think that's interesting information if he went to Greek Orthodox Mass and if the Queen went with him and stuff like that. How do they keep that private?
because they're not important. You know what's important. What's important? What's important is garbage. You know that.
Yeah. The
I mean,
police have
what's
visited
important,
Meghan Markle's residence 9 times in the last 9 months. That was yesterday's headline.
and that was important.
Yeah.
And what I really liked, frankly, the Duke of Edinburgh was a funny guy, and he made some really, really, shall we say, politically incorrect statements because he was a sailor. You know, he was an officer in the Navy, and he was very forthright. And so it took him a while to get used to having to govern himself somewhat. And I say somewhat. One of my favorite stories about him is that when he was going on a royal trip to Australia, he was told that he would be asked some of the usual questions for entrance into the country. So when he gets to customs, they said, "Do you have a criminal record?" And his response was, "I didn't know it was still a requirement for entry."
It's very clever.
Well, he was. He was very clever man, very funny. He said some pretty horrible things that people like to throw up. Like he said at one point, because he was very much into the environment and naturalism and so on, a big hunter, you see.
Mm.
And he used to say that, it was said once anyway, and people have never let the rest of the world forget, that he wanted to come back as a deadly virus and knock out 2/3 of the world's population.
Why'd he say that? That's pretty extreme.
Well, it's very extreme, but of course it was kind of typical of the way he said things.
Hyperbolic?
When he was in Paraguay, he told Alfredo Stroessner, "You're very fortunate not to have to deal with all that democracy nonsense."
Oh, when did he say that? When did that happen? He must have been young.
No, it was, I think, in the 70s, the 60s, something like that. 70s.
Well, okay, that's 50 years. That's almost 50 years ago.
Yeah, and he's almost 100. It's not that young.
Well, I mean, young for him, he'd be like in his 50s, right? I mean,
Believe me, he didn't know he was young at the time.
okay.
But beyond that, I mean, you know, one of the things that keep coming up. So when they say things like, if you mention any of the royals, you know, they slaughtered my family. Okay, I understand that you're Irish. I understand that the history of Ireland is very unfortunate. I have a lot of Irish blood myself, and I don't mean Protestant Irish. But A, the current royals had nothing to do with it. B, the current leadership of the Republic of Ireland is far worse. So
Mm.
I, you know, I again, if you're going to do that, if you're going to behave in that fashion every time someone of note dies, especially in the Anglosphere, where the vast majority of people of any note have something weird with them. They're Masons or they're, I don't know, whatever they are. Just hate everybody and rejoice every time some public figure dies. But bear in mind something else. Whatever his failings, this fellow was a World War II vet. He risked his life repeatedly fighting the Germans and the Japanese on the high seas, which is something most of us have not done. Now, I don't mean to excuse all veterans anywhere from anything, from responsibility to polite behavior. But on the other hand, those of us, as I said to another question in the Patron show, those of us who are benefiting from what they did, and really make sure that we're wonderful before we go on the warpath. Um, I mean, and to be honest with you, I was hit by his death much harder than I thought I would be. And you know, you try to parse your feelings out because I'm not what you call a great admirer of the Duke of Edinburgh. I mean, I liked his sense of humor, but you know what it is? It's because he was always there.
Mm.
As long as I've been alive, I've known about the Duke of Edinburgh, husband of the Queen. I've known about the Queen my whole life. I cannot think of a time that I was conscious and was not aware of the existence of the Queen. And I can tell you when it happened. We had a bunch of Canadian pennies uh, lying on the table at home. And some of them were George VI, and some of them were Elizabeth II, the early picture. And I can remember asking somebody, whether it was my mom or my dad or my brother, I don't remember. I said, "Who's that?" "Well, that's the Queen." "And who's that?" "That's the King." "Her husband?" "No, no, her father." "Oh." And at that remote moment of my childhood, I had the notion that somehow, because our pennies had Lincoln on them, but somehow it was the same coinage,
Mm.
and that we had a president as well as a queen. How that actually worked, I didn't know. I didn't think about it.
Yeah, I didn't know Prince Philip well at all, but I had a very strong emotional reaction to his death, and I think a lot of us did, a lot of fans of the show. And that's kind of proof of one of Charles's points about monarchy, in my opinion, is that it's more personal. It feels really personal, and this is for someone I didn't even really know him well at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
And yet it feels personal. You know.
it does.
Um,
And I mean, if I were in England now, and I were allowed to by the gods of COVID, I would file past the body in those mob scenes you see that they do for every royal funeral.
yeah.
Of course, when the Queen goes,
Ooh.
that's and again, it's not as though I'm the biggest fan the Windsors ever had, but they've certainly, for what they are, uh, as a couple, they've certainly presented a stable front, and they've been there my whole life.
I mean, to me, what they represent is when all the world leaders are just acting like children. They're the grown-ups in the room.
Yeah, and of course there were other grown-ups, but they're all gone now.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's left, my generation is kind of unique in that we managed to grow old without ever growing up. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment of sorts. A whole generation of Peter Pans. And now I look at the world's leaders. I don't mean the younger ones like Justin Bieber Trudeau, who's obviously running around in his daddy's clothes, but um, the general run of them, I mean, they're just so. They obviously lack adult supervision. And it's almost as though one of the big problems, not the only one, but one of the big problems with the COVID adventure is that there hasn't been someone to say, "Now, there, dear, sit back, relax for a second. Is this what you really want to do with your population? Really?" Really good friend of mine who's by no means, by any stretch, a monarchist. He saw the Queen's COVID speech last year and was kind of blown away by it. It was the first time he'd ever seen a speech by her. I'll tell you what, that lady knows how to give speeches.
I need to listen to that. I was not aware.
Yeah, it's a good speech. She knows how to be reassuring and inspiring in a quiet, grandmotherly way. But I'm so old. I remember when she was young.
Hmm.
I mean, she had only been queen about 12 years when I first became aware of her existence. So she was in her 30s somewhere. And I saw her grow old, you know. As I grew up, she grew old.
Hmm.
And now all these years later, when I'm seeing my contemporaries popping off like 10 Little Indians, she's still there. She's reigned longer than Franz Josef or Queen Victoria or George III. And if she lasts so long into next year, they're going to have, is it a platinum jubilee or something? That's never been done before. They had a golden jubilee when she turned 50, when she ruled for 50. then her Diamond Jubilee. Now she's going to have a Platinum Jubilee. No one, no monarch, certainly no British monarch anyway, has ever had a Platinum Jubilee.
That better be the celebration of a lifetime. I mean, that's like Bilbo Baggins status or something. I mean, that's
Well, if
111
COVID,
years old.
COVID permitting, of course.
Oh,
I mean, can you
I mean, by
imagine what a
next year?
horror?
I mean,
Well, I'm thinking, frankly, I think that I don't know. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a scientist, nor am I a government apparatchik. But looking back in history, uh, the usually pandemics run 1.5, 2 years. If this thing is anything like the 1918 pandemic, it'll ease up about this time next year.
okay. All right. Is there anything else, Charles?
Ooh. The end is coming for all of us.
Well, yeah.
Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Okay. Well, I kind of wish you didn't say that because that makes what I have to say awkward.
Oh, all right. Should I say something else?
Say something else. Just say anything.
All right. Anything at all. Sure. I really miss Debbie Reynolds.
Okay, that's good enough. All right. Yeah, I have some unfortunate news for one of our patrons. One of our patrons, Anthony, who I've gotten pretty close to, at least in correspondence. His dad passed away in Easter, and so he didn't ask for it, but I really think it's important that we say a couple prayers on the show, and if you at home could join us, I think that would be really good. So, Charles, if you would, please.
Sure. In the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord.
Let perpetual light shine upon him.
May his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed, to the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Well, Anthony, I'm very sorry to hear that. Both Vinny and I know what it's like to lose your father.
Yeah.
There's no pain quite as intense or horrible if you're a son and if you had a good relationship with him than losing your father. It just Vinny's went fairly slow. Mine went very quick. But both ways have their good points and their bad points. But however they end up, the old man's gone. And when he's gone, a part of you goes with him and will never come back. But it will be better in a week. It will be better in a month. It will be better in a year. I used to wonder before my father died, when someone else's mother or father or brother or somebody would die, like the postman's mother dies, and you find out about it. You see the postman, you say, gee, I heard about your mom, sorry. I wondered, I didn't know his mother, and I barely know him. I wondered if, just make it, yes.
It does.
It sure does.
Yeah.
It sure does. So the only advice that I could give you, apart from being sure to pray for the repose of his soul, be sure to have a mass said for him in 30 days, and another in a year, and another in 7 years. The month's mine, the year's mine, the 7 years mine. Whenever you feel like crying, do it. Don't even try to hold it in. Just let it go. Eventually it stops to a degree. Some things will never stop. Even now, my dad's been gone since 96. Something will happen. Not often, but now and then. My first thought is, I can't wait to tell and then it hits. So, um,
I don't know if I can say this without getting choked up, but um, now that your dad is where he is, he's actually in a better position to help you become the man you're destined to be. As much as he loved you on earth, loves you exponentially that much more and will help you that much more in heaven.
yeah,
Hmm.
definitely.
All right.
All right. So, moving right along, what else we got ahead of us?
We have a bunch of questions. We have
We have no memes?
Oh, you're right, Charles. I totally, yeah, you're right. Sorry, we've been really jumping around here from really somber to really
Insane.
yeah. All right, so one, I don't know if it's a meme per se, but so I saw this picture. I forgot where I saw this picture. I don't know where this picture came up. So this is Charles on the phone. Don't give us the context, Charles. Oh wait, actually, no. Tell. Was this on Twitter? How did this come up?
I don't remember.
It's such a funny pose, though. I don't know, like something. I feel like this picture really it invokes the imagination a lot. Like, you know what I mean? Like everybody has their
Yeah.
own image of what is actually what you're listening to, like a call from the president of the United States or something, something serious or I don't know. So I have this idea. Do I don't know how people are going to do this. I don't know how they're going to get the image. Maybe I'll post it on Twitter or something. I want people to do a meme, and I want people to say what Charles is actually listening to that elicits that kind of facial expression. And we'll send it in by Friday of this week, because we film on Saturday. So you got to send in by Friday. And then we'll do a little contest. We'll do a review, and the winner will get a free book if they're from the United States of their choice. Yeah. So, yeah, that's it. How do you feel about that, Charles? You excited? You like that?
What would be funny is if I don't remember the context, so I don't even remember what we got that face.
Are you wait? So what? It looks like. Yeah, I don't know. That's just really funny how these things just. Okay.
I think I don't know for sure. I could be wrong, but I think that was at the ABC studios, but I'm not sure. It could have been later.
Okay. Um. Right. So for our listeners who listen to on iTunes and through audio format, hop onto YouTube, and we have this marked on the timestamp for this episode, and that's how you'll be able to I guess find this picture and see what's going on. And I guess I'll post it on Twitter or something, maybe Facebook, so you guys can use the image. Okay, on to the questions.
The questions.
First is very long, and actually I don't even know if there's a question in there so much as a comment, but brace yourselves, everyone. There is a lot of feistiness here from Andrew, who says, I wanted to voice my displeasure about the shocking and appalling hate speech that occurred on the last episode regarding my beloved adoptive home of New Jersey.
Oh, here we go. All right. What's up?
I'm so sick of the unoriginal jokes that dull people who think they are clever throw at the hardworking and family-oriented people of the Garden State. First, we have the Basilica of the Sacred Heart in Newark, an absolutely stunning edifice built at the turn of the century in the French Gothic Revival style that, while certainly being no Taj Mahoney in L.A.,
Now that was a very dirty low blow.
was still blessed with a papal visit in 1995 by John Paul II and is the fifth largest cathedral in North America.
And
More
it is beautiful. I have been there.
More recently, the rectory of said basilica was used to house one of Italy's most handsome soap opera stars while he took classes at Seton Hall at parishioner expense. Nighty night, baby. I have no idea what that means, but
Oh,
okay.
I do. That was Cardinal Tobin. You see, while the kid was living with him, living in the rectory, he tweeted "Nighty night, baby." Cardinal Tobin did, and so everyone presumed that he had sent the tweet to this gentleman who was staying with him in his house. When asked about it, the cardinal said it was to his sister.
Wait, what? Wait, I don't. Okay, none of that actually makes sense. I don't understand.
All right. Cardinal Tobin lives in the rectory at the cathedral. Yes, we got that.
Got that, yeah.
Okay. This handsome young Italian soap opera star, out of the goodness of his heart, I guess he contributed to his education and brought him to Jersey and had him live in the rectory.
Yeah.
So, the cardinal sent out a text or an email or something that said "Nighty night, baby."
Oh, a text or an email. Okay, I thought you said tweet, which...
No, it wasn't a tweet. That would have been interesting. No, I might send that out myself when I get back on Twitter.
Okay, that's what I was confused about.
No. So he sent it out, and the question was who it was sent to. The evil-minded, the prurient, presumed that it was sent to this young gentleman who was living in the rectory. The cardinal asserts that it was sent to his sister. Not living in the rectory, I'm not privy to what's going on there, so I don't know. But he did get his education at Seton Hall at parishioner expense.
Poor Cardinal Tobin. Some people are probably gonna use that like every time he tweets or something.
Yeah. I have to admit that if I were emceeing a program that he was at, I would have to bite my tongue. Not to end my talk by saying "Nighty night, baby." But perhaps it was all quite innocent. Who knows? I wasn't there.
Okay, but fascinating story. Okay, all right. Onward with Andrew. Onward with Andrew's spiel. Second, we are blessed to have chapels of the FSSP, ICKSP, and the SSPX in our state, as well as over a dozen diocesan TLMs, not to mention a Byzantine eparchy and a Syriac Catholic diocese. We are also home to Vince Lombardi's Knights of Columbus Council, a bus tour that will take you to every spot featured on The Sopranos, and an infamous beach house in the Diocese of Metuchen. Lastly, the Jersey Shore.
The infamous beach house was Cardinal McCarrick's beach house.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. All right. Lastly, the Jersey Shore. Oh, hardy har har. We never heard that one before, but if you want to go that route, I'll play. Let's look up Snooki, who Vinny will be pleased to learn was adopted by Italian-American parents, but who herself is ethnically Chilean and Romani. She's not even from Jersey, bro. She's from... She's from Monroe, New York, also known as Charles's precious Hudson Valley. She's one of you. Something about people in glass houses applies here, I believe.
Oh, yeah, well, let me tell you, Andrew, nobody's claiming the situation was adopted or that he comes from the Hudson Valley.
That really is the unfortunate history of New Jersey. The undeserved bad reputation she gets from low-rent New Yorkers who come here on vacation because our beaches are superior.
Superior to Jones Beach? Oh, come on.
Vinny said, quote, "No one likes New Jersey," end quote. And he's actually right about that. No one likes New Jersey. But as the t-shirt says, we don't like you either.
Well,
go ahead and keep being bigoted toward those from New Jersey. I'm petitioning to make New Jerseyans a protected class so that your callous words will be punishable as a hate crime. We are truly victims. We can't make left turns. We can't pump our own gas. And we have ridiculously high cholesterol from our steady diet of Taylor ham, egg, and cheese sandwiches.
Those are good. Don't let anyone fool you.
Soon the world will know our truth.
Indeed.
P.S. The joke is on Tumblr House, as I have been robbing you guys blind on shipping and handling for years now. Wow,
I'm sure
Andrew.
that's true. I'm sure that's true. Well, firstly, Andrew, do you have a house in Hackensack? I'm just curious. No, all right, well, listen, in the immortal words of Archie Bunker, when the meathead was looking for a place to live, he said, I tried Queens, there's nothing. He says, try Jersey. I tried Brooklyn, there's nothing. Try Jersey. There's nothing in the Bronx. Try Jersey. He says, finally, Arch, I hate Jersey. And Archie Bunker says, everybody hates Jersey, but somebody's got to live there.
Wow.
But no, actually, Jersey, to be honest, just for a moment, Jersey's not as bad as it's made out to be. Parts of it are quite nice. In fact, most of it really deserves the title of the Garden State. However, if you are a New Yorker or a Philadelphian, all you get to see is Hoboken or Camden. And those do not make the best impressions. But Hoboken did produce one important person for the Italian-American community.
Who? Tony Soprano?
No.
Who?
Old Blue Eyes.
Frank Sinatra?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was from Hoboken. Yeah. So, Jersey is an interesting place. I've actually had a lot of good times in Jersey, so I can't bag on it too much. Although, again, you may palm Snooki off on New York, but you're not getting away with the situation. He's all yours.
She.
The situation is a he.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Snooki is all yours.
No.
Okay.
The situation is very definitely he, and very definitely Italian, and very definitely from Jersey.
Oh, the situation, the person. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. That I'm not used to
Obviously,
people. I'm not used to humans being called situation.
Hey. The situation. Deal.
All right.
That's what he said.
All right. Since we're dealing with some lighthearted comments, one from Medieval Chris, who says, speaking of conferences, when can we expect the inaugural off-the-menu Tumblr House conference? I think us Catholic gentlemen and gentlewomen need to get together in person once the pandemic allows. P.S. Can Charles please do his "we have to have guitar at the Mass to attract young people" boomer Catholic impression? Wow.
I can't do that, but I think one place we're not going to have it is Jersey.
That's a no-brainer. That's crossed off. Cross that one off the list for possibilities.
So we're not doing it at the fabulous Motel 6 in Bayonne.
Bayonne, where is that?
Bayonne, New Jersey.
Oh, no.
Oh, all right. We could do it in Paramus. They've got a very nice mall in Paramus.
Okay.
You don't want to do it in Paramus? Okay, well, that's fine.
Do you have an impression for us?
I sure do. But we have to have guitars to attract the young people.
Okay.
Incidentally, after last week's show, for reasons I don't really remember, I looked up the composer of songs like Sons of God and Here We Are and all that I was subjected to.
Can you sing that one? The
Sons of God, here's Holy Word, or that one.
Yeah.
Gather around the table of the Lord, eat his body, drink his blood, and we'll sing a song of love. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Brothers, sisters, we are... No?
That beat is just so obnoxious. It's just like, why do we have to... If you won't tolerate that for normal music, why do you have to tolerate that for liturgical music?
Well, funny you should ask. That comes from a record composed by a gentleman called Ray Repp, R-E-P-P, Ray
Okay.
Repp. And Ray Repp was the composer of, amongst other things, what was called the Mass for Young Americans. It came out in '66. And Sons of God was one of the tunes on that record. And he was a pioneer of liturgical music, but he died a year ago. And I was reading America Magazine, lionizing him as a wonderful fellow who captured who we were as a generation and our aspirations for social justice and for being young and alive and stuff like that. And then I looked at his obituary. It turned out he'd been a wife for 20 years to a husband who's a writer. And then it turned out that back in 1985, he wrote a manifesto about music in which he said that church music was too oriented toward the supernatural. And he attacked black spirituals because they made the slaves happy with their lot in life. And I thought to myself, how in God's name did this man become the dominant force in American Catholic Church music for 15 years?
Who makes that decision?
The bishops. Or, well, their liturgical machinery in Washington make that choice for them. He originally worked for something called Friends of the English Liturgy, FEL Publications, but he had a falling out with them, and he sued them, and they sued him. And then FEL sued a bunch of dioceses because they kept pirating FEL songs for their parish hymnals. So the bishops turned around, and they refused to use any more FEL music. So FEL collapsed, and that was most of Ray Repp's repertoire, so it wasn't good for him either. He also got into a legal fight with Andrew Lloyd Webber over ownership of a song. So that was Ray Repp. Anyway, interesting guy from St. Louis, Missouri.
All right. Question from Laramie.
Laramie.
Sir Charles, there has been a lot of uncharitable purity spiraling lately. So this weekend I have a broad question. Can you define for us the concept of bigotry? Can you list some examples from history? Do you suppose bigotry is what largely animates society right now?
How do you define bigotry? Presumption that you yourself and what you find familiar are the only way to go. And there's nothing beyond you and yours. Anything else is inferior by definition. If it's not us, it's wrong. Now, mind you, that's not always untrue. I mean, if you're a flat earther, you're wrong. But most things that bigotry affects aren't really that important. Matters of style rather than substance. They can be race, they can be ethnic.
Well, how does this play with the faith? Because the faith is true, so...
Well, the faith is true, but Catholics themselves can be really silly. So, for instance, when my father was young, in New Bedford, Massachusetts, his family were French-Canadian. Oddly enough, so was he. And on one occasion, they found themselves forced to go to the Irish church, which they had never been to before, even though it was closer to their home. They missed the streetcar down the north end to their own place. Anyway, so they went in, they sat in the front row, and in the midst of his sermon, the priest looked at them and said, "Why don't your people go back where you belong?" Well, my grandmother spoke English quite as well as she spoke French. So on their way out the door, she turned to the priest and said, "I'm so terribly sorry, Father. I hadn't realized this was an Episcopal church."
That's nasty.
Well, he got so mad. My dad said he couldn't talk. He was so angry. My grandmother knew if there was anything a bug Irishman didn't want to be called, it was Episcopalian. And my mame, she could do the Brahmin voice beautifully.
Seems that's a trait that runs in your family, knowing how to grind people's gears.
That's bigotry right there.
Knowing how to trigger people.
That's bigotry. Just saying that is bigotry.
That's actually a compliment, to be honest.
Okay, I'll take it as one then. But see, there are a lot of other ways Catholics can be bigots. I mean, they can be bigots against Catholics for racial reasons. Other Catholics, I mean, not just Irish versus French Canadians, or Irish versus Poles, or Irish versus Italians, or Irish versus anybody else, but against Black Catholics. I'm a Knight of Peter Claver, so I know a thing or two about that. Against, well, of course, converts versus cradles, and vice versa. Very often, cradle Catholics look down on converts as Johnny-come-latelys who don't really know the faith. And very often, converts look at cradles as lukewarm people who take the faith for granted and really have if they weren't born Catholic, they wouldn't be Catholic, is the feeling some converts have.
That's funny, because I'm a cradle, and I'm biased against cradles, because I always figure, because converts actually had to work for the faith, like they weren't spoon-fed it since they were a baby,
I'm the same way, but nevertheless, you do have these sorts of dissonances, and they not just that. I mean, Dominican versus Jesuit. Oh gosh, it just goes on and on and on. It never ends, and it's not a Catholic thing per se. It's a human thing. Bigotry is ingrained in us. I don't mean that in the sense of systemic racism. I mean that it is a natural human instinct to dislike the different. It is a measure of how one is developed as a cultivated individual that he's able to overcome that. I mean, and don't get me wrong. I mean, a lot of my people are very bigoted against the English Canadians, the Anglo-Canadians, and the Anglo-Americans. And I know that from time to time we've dealt with Quebecois matters on this. I've gotten a little bit of feedback, shall we say, implying that I'm not as true blue as I should be, and that I perhaps have bought in too much into the way the Anglo-Canadians look at things. They would perhaps make the opposite charge and say I'm too much a Frenchman. And the Canadians might say I'm too American, and the Americans might say I'm too Canadian, and on and on and on and on. But unfortunately, it's not just poor me, it's everybody. It's the nature of life. If you come from a mixed background, you will always find people who are unhappy with you. And I just saw, I forget if it was Twitter or Facebook or one of the other modern purveyors of wisdom, but there was a thing about, and this might even have been a satire, I don't know, about how multi-ethnic people or mixed blood people or whatever are actually racist by definition.
Yeah, I saw that.
I didn't read it. I mean, okay, fine, sure. So what are they supposed to do? Blow their brains out? I mean, anyway, so you wanted examples of bigotry? There you go. We can take it further, if you like. Now, mind you, I am not going to say that certain ideas aren't true and certain ideas aren't false. But generally speaking, there are exceptions. Generally speaking, your behavior toward individuals should not be predicated on your agreement or disagreement with them, unless they're pulling a gun on you. If someone is a Southern Baptist, you shouldn't treat them like garbage for that reason. You just don't do that. At least decent people don't. But I used a Protestant to begin with because I'm going to go into an area that's touched with horror, but I'll say it anyway. It's easy if you're not a sedevacantist, as I'm not, to be bigoted against the sedes. And if you are, it's easy to be bigoted against what they are pleased to call the Novus Ordo cult. But you see the problem there is that for the non-sedevacantist, these folk have never, ever, ever been declared schismatic or heretical by any church authority. Contrariwise, if you are a sedevacantist, there is no authority to decree the so-called Novus Ordo cult is a cult. But regardless of what you think in terms of doctrine, you shouldn't treat the other like a pariah. You really shouldn't. Because you see, if you are right, if you do know what you're talking about, you shouldn't need to behave like a monster. You should, as St. Francis de Sales tells us, you should be able to attract more flies with honey than with vinegar. We forget that.
That's what we do in the business world, though. I mean, the people who act the most monstrous make the most sales.
Really?
No, I'm
that makes
no,
sense.
I mean, of course.
Well, now you got me convinced.
I mean,
you know what? Our product's too good for a moron
what's
you.
rule number one of convincing someone of just the laws of persuasion, right? Is you be nice and be welcoming, right? That's
no. It's telling them they're full of crap, and you know what? You don't even need them. Get the hell out of here.
I mean, it's like treating humans like robots. Like, well, everything is in this vacuum, and people don't have emotions, and that means I can just, say anything, scream anything in whatever tone I want, and either people accept the truth of my words or not. Humans don't work like that, sir.
Not as a rule. Not as a rule. If you're right, if I don't mean right in that, you absolutely are, but I mean if your position is right, whatever it may be, if your position is right, then act like it. Don't act as if you doubt it. Which, at the end of the day, I think a lot of bigotry is based upon the fear that one's position is not correct. What else we got?
I want to...
We all want.
Let me just do a new thing here. All right, here we go. I'm bringing up a screen for everyone to see. This is TumblrHouse.com, the website, the blog. Wow, this is unbelievable. What a gorgeous website. Wow, I'm just... This is amazing right now. Okay, so what do we got here? We have 10 problems in the traditionalist movement. Father Ripperger has all this stuff. It's very interesting food for thought. But what we're talking about right now, he also mentions bullying people. And so I'm just going to read what he says. We have to be sure that we're not always trying to seek to beat up on people. This is part of the whole anger thing. Yeah, it's true that the state of the church is bad. But that doesn't mean that when you see people doing something wrong, you beat up on them. We must accept that people aren't going to get it. They're just not going to get it because they don't have the grace. You cannot see the value of the particular tradition without grace. That means that because grace is gratuitous, you didn't merit it. You're here because God chose you, not because somehow you think you're special. The same thing applies to these other people. He wants us to merit the grace for them. How are we going to do this if our spiritual lives aren't in order because we're angry, we're impure, we're this or that? If we're not getting our act together spiritually, the traditional movement will never get off the ground. Now, granted, God will always raise saints to make sure the tradition is passed, but will be part of the problem, not part of the solution. Just because you see the problems and you have the grace to see the problems does not give you license to abuse both the grace that you received and other people. And I very purposefully put that in bold because that's an incredibly important lesson.
That's for sure.
And, related, he says, after that, driving others away. And so what does all this mean? Trads, in my experience, tend to drive more away than they very often attract. And this means that we have to do some serious self-reflecting about how we're behaving in relationship to other people to make sure that they are able to see the value of tradition. I'm going to leave it there. But I actually put a note. I actually added a little bit because people kind of get the wrong idea. This is not a condemnation of the traditionalist movement by any means. In the spiritual life, one looks inwardly at one's own flaws in order to improve oneself. So too must we also do that collectively as a movement. As Father Ripperger has alluded to, his lecture is rooted in a desire to advance the movement to a greater level so it can truly become a shining city on a hill. Okay, so I felt that was very relevant to what we were talking about, Charles.
I think so.
So keep that in mind, everyone. I mean, I think the Bible says one or two things about this regarding charity. Whereas if you don't have charity, if you don't have charity, you have nothing. Something like that, right? Isn't that a line or something?
Or something. No, it's no, but faith without works is dead, of course, and also charity. But if it's St. Paul. But if I have not charity, I'm like a tinkling cymbal, and so on.
Yeah.
But see, the Bible's a Protestant book, and we're not bound by it.
Oh, well, never mind then. All right, next question.
Take care of that.
Yeah. Okay. More stuff from Medieval Chris. Greetings to the esteemed purveyor of books and salutations to the esteemed author of books.
He's cacophonous. Okay, I get it. Sure.
Sirs Vincent and Charles. Christ is risen, Christos anesti, and Christos voskressi. Warmest Easter wishes. It is I, straight from the past, Medieval Chris. In keeping with my past questions and comments, I have a strange one for you. Misters Franchini and Coulombe. Charles, once you said, or at least I think you did, quote, "You cannot convert what you don't love," end quote, when discussing how some missionaries are the best anthropologists. I think I have found my group. While they are relatively modern and I am, of course, medieval, I am fascinated by and have a lot of admiration for the Mormons. Of course, they have some very ugly facets in their history and teaching, but it seems that they also have very exemplary moral people. They do good works. Many dress modestly, and their missionary work seems to outpace all others on a per capita basis. I also am interested by their story of being pioneers in moving west to start a new society. I only know a few of them, so how do you go about meeting and talking to them about historic Christianity? Are there Catholic apostolates to convert Mormons? Do you, Sir Charles, know any Mormons? Have they converted to the Catholic Church? Any advice on starting the conversation? What interesting things can you tell us about the Mormons and their history?
Wow, that's a lot. Well, okay. Gosh, where do I start? Well, firstly, I have known Mormons. I know them in the armed forces. I know them in school. I've known a couple of Mormon converts to Catholicism. Not through my AGs. They converted for other reasons on their own. They are an interesting tribe of people, without a doubt. And here we hit on some very important points. On the one hand, as you say, their history and especially their theology, which is science fiction, without a doubt, is just bizarre. But on the other hand, humanly speaking, they have family values, as you say. They certainly have large families. If because of their theology, having children and bringing them up is a big part of the religion, because your children will eventually become the inhabitants of the planet you'll have when you're a god. Adam, you see, is our god. There's a creator god beyond him, of course, but then there's Adam. Adam doesn't live here anymore. He lives on a planet called Coulombe. And I have to admit, it's a rather nasty joke of mine when Mormon missionaries come by my place. I'll always let them use the phone, but because that's a big thing for them. They don't get the chance to get the phone to call home very often, the missionary kids. So let them use the phone. And then when they ask you about it, I'll say either that it was tough growing up in the only Catholic family on Kolob, because the priest only got there like once a year or so, which is why we ended up moving to Earth, because we go to mass regularly and so on. Gentiles aren't supposed to know about Kolob, so it's kind of unsettling.
Isn't that making
And
fun
then
of their religion?
helping.
Okay.
And the other thing is that I always say, well, don't worry about me. Doubtless one of my Mormon descendants will baptize me, because they baptize for the dead. How they do indeed. One of the things you'll find with a lot of Mormons is that, especially converts, is that they are more attracted by the social side of the faith than they are by the doctrine, actually. A lot of them don't really know the theology of Mormonism very well. But by converting, they become part of a larger family. And that's difficult to argue with when you're dealing with people who are not used to thinking theologically. I had an interesting experience taking a bunch of seminarians to the visitors center of the Mormon temple in Washington, D.C. It's outside. If you drive around the Beltway, you'll see it. The first time I ever saw the Mormon temple there, I didn't know what it was. It looked to me, honestly, like the land of the Emerald City. That is what it looked like. And I thought it was just me, but I turned my head and I saw someone had painted on the overpass, not a joke, "Surrender Dorothy."
Sorry, I'm googling the Mormon temple.
Oh, you're getting a look at it? Well, you'll see
I've
what I
never
mean.
seen it. Yeah.
In Washington, yeah. It looks like the Emerald City.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it looks like a hologram. The closer you
Kind of
get,
does, because it kind of stands alone. And
yeah, and it's so odd looking. So,
hmm.
at any rate, so I brought the seminarians there because one of the other things about Mormonism is that it is the most American religion.
How is that?
Well, you know how we Americans have tended to think of ourselves as the chosen people, in a sense, the successors of the people of the Old Testament. Before I've spoken about how Calvinist peoples tend to radically identify with the Old Testament. Well, the Mormons turn that not into an attitude or an impression, but into an actual dogma. The United States are the new kingdom of Israel. And when Christ comes back to earth, he's coming not to Jerusalem, but to rebuild the temple in, drumroll please, Independence, Missouri.
Wait, what?
He's going to rebuild the temple in Independence, Missouri.
Why?
Why not?
Why that city?
Why do you ask God those questions?
Well, I guess that's true from their perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now then, part of the thing, of course, with the Mormons is that, as you know, they don't drink, they don't smoke. They're not supposed to anyway. They're also Jack Mormons who do all those things very interestedly. It's a very, very interesting and unusual faith. But of course, much as we might admire certain aspects of what they do, how do you convert them? Well, they're kind of hard nuts to crack. Because, as I say, they often attract people who are not that interested in theology per se. But there are Catholic apostolates to Mormons, in Utah anyway, I'm pretty sure. I've read about them somewhere or other, so they can be found. The biggest problem, I think, is to show again, I have never really, there are other peoples, shall we say, and I'll talk about that in a minute, that I have engaged quite a lot in this sort of thing. And I certainly know enough Mormon theology to make the Mormons I've known a little uncomfortable. The trick is to get them to see that the theology just doesn't work, and that it's based upon a history that isn't true. Because one of the things they're taught is that after Christ was crucified, he came to the Americas. You see, the Indians are the descendants of the 10 lost tribes, and they had a whole civilization here. So he appeared, and there's a whole story about what happened in these supposed Israeli settlements over here, and that is what the Book of Mormon is about. And they hold that to be an equal testament with the Bible. So it's an equal standing. So basically, the individual has to come to believe that the Book of Mormon isn't true. And the only way that I personally can think of getting that across is to demolish the historical aspect. Now, the other thing that the Mormons claim is that the church founded by the apostles apostatized very quickly, and that Christ's other testament on the American side was the true church, until that too was destroyed when there were internecine wars. And finally, a scribe wrote down all of this in golden plates and hid them in a hill in upstate New York, the hill Cumorah, where the angel Moroni appeared and to Joseph Smith and showed them gave him the magic spectacles that allowed him to read them. And supposedly he transcribed everything from that. And then after that, he continued to get revelations. And they have ongoing revelation in the Mormon Church. Every president of the church in Salt Lake City can alter teaching supposedly as God tells him to. This is a moving target, you might say.
Yeah.
So, I mean, originally, for instance, they didn't allow blacks in the Mormon priesthood because of the Book of Mormon. It says they descend from Cain. Now, the problem I've always had with that is that that's true, weren't all of Cain's descendants drowned in the flood? So
Wow.
there wouldn't be any
Sneaky,
blacks.
Charles.
Well, no, I mean,
Good point.
I'll say. So at any rate, because they were descendants of Cain, they weren't allowed to be priests in the Mormon Church. But as you can imagine, in the 50s and 60s, in the 60s and 70s, there was increasing pressure on them.
Wait. So they adhere to some of the Old Testament,
Yeah.
including Noah.
Yes.
Okay.
Or they take it literally. Or they take the salvation history of the Old Testament literally.
Oh, okay.
So, to make a long story interesting, I guess, the end result of all this good stuff was that as the pressure mounted on them about this and about racism and so forth, in the 70s, I was in high school at the time, so it was 75 or 6, I guess. The then head of the Mormon Church had a revelation from God that we could now admit blacks into the Mormon priesthood. And they have ever since. Similarly, in 1890, the Mormons had practiced polygamy. And the U.S. government said, well, as long as you do that, there is no way we're going to admit Utah as a state. So the president of the faith had a revelation that prohibited polygamy. And Utah duly became a state in 1890. So it's a flexible religion, but these are the sorts of things. If you find someone who's very logically oriented in that faith, these are the sorts of things you need to bring up. But again, how do you do it? You can't really start out by saying, you don't believe all that science fiction garbage, do you? You really think God lives in a planet? What, did he get there by a flying saucer? That isn't really going to do it. When you are working with people of another faith, you really, really have to do everything not to be the kind of Catholic they're expecting that will allow them to turn you off and to disregard everything you say. Because you got to bear something in mind. If someone is out of the church, whether they left themselves or they come from a long line of non-Catholics, most are looking for a reason not to deal with the church. So in your approach to them, you can't ever give, if you can avoid it, you can't ever be the horror Catholic of their imagination. You can't do it. Well, I mean, you can do what you want, but you won't get any results.
Somebody
And my
actually just tweeted about that. I forgot. I saw it on one of our tweets. I don't know. Somebody tweeted that basically, which is that they're expecting that of trads. So you have
yeah,
to squash that. You know.
you can't be the horror lad that you began with. Now, part of the problem you're facing, O medieval one, is that apparently you don't know any Mormons either. They are interesting people, but my advice to you is look at the people you're among. Look at the people amongst whom you grew up. If you're a Catholic, them's your folk. If you're a Southern Baptist, or not a Southern Baptist yourself, but if you're a Catholic living in Alabama, out in the countryside, it's the Baptists, and you've got to know them better than they know themselves. You've got to know their hymns. You've got to know their customs. You've got to know their rituals. You've got to know everything about them. I'll tell you, when I was in 6th grade, I read about the Chinese and Malabar rites. Now, these were two separate things. The Malabar rites have nothing to do with the Syro-Malabar or the Malankara rites, per se. No. These were, what's the word I want? These were, gosh, I just blanked out. What was I saying? Oh, the Malabar rites, yeah. So these were the practices that the Jesuits who were trying to evangelize Madura in the south of India used. They dressed like Brahmins and they learned all the Brahmin techniques and the Vedas and all that kind of thing. The Chinese rites were very similar. Well, herein lay a problem for them and herein lay a danger. There were other missionaries who objected to the way they acted, thought they were too close to, in other words, that they were going native, basically, losing the faith and becoming absorbed by the people they were trying to evangelize. So, eventually, the Dominicans and Franciscans, not all of them, but the neighboring orders in those places, appealed to the Holy See, and initially, the Holy See shut down both projects. In China, this was kind of a disaster. But that's what happened. And then Pius XI re-examined the things and said, nope, we were wrong. And the Malabar rites and Chinese rites were correct. That story excited me and haunted me for two reasons. It excited me because I never really wanted to be a priest, but I always wanted to evangelize. And the other, however, that really made me think, but it turned out to be kind of comforting, was if they were wrong in the 16 and 1700s, they were right in the 1900s or not, or I would have to accept the fact that in prudential judgments, sometimes the Holy See makes pretty bad mistakes. And the reason why I say that was comforting for me, because we're now in the year of our Lord, 1971, when Put Your Hand in the Hand of the Man was the biggest processional hymn in the LA Archdiocese. And when, if you said anything about the new Mass you didn't like, you were told, Rome's ordered it. You'll do as you're told. Well, the story of the Chinese and the Malabar rites reminded me that while Rome may have ordered it, it didn't mean it was necessarily correct. But of course, that also put one down the terrible rabbit hole of trying to figure it out. Obedience versus principle versus just what you like yourself. And that, of course, is something that should haunt us all. You see, when you want to evangelize, there is always the danger of going native. There's the danger of forgetting the reason why you're there. And so, how does one combat that? By remembering one important thing. The Catholic Church is the one true church, and the sacraments are the means of salvation given by Jesus Christ. That's it. There is no other way that we see in Revelation. There's all sorts of speculation. People come up with all sorts of nice theories. But from the Bible to Trent, they're very clear. So it struck me later that one really, really, really had to try to get as many people into the church as possible if one really was fond of them. So the thing is then that missionary work, as our medieval questioner rightly pointed out, has to begin with the people that you know, the people that you love. If you're fortunate enough to belong to a Catholic family, and I was, that's great. If the members of your family aren't Catholic, that's tough. What also makes evangelizing a bit difficult too is that you will often find, depending on where you live and where you've been, that non-Catholics are often much more enjoyable company than Catholics. It's true, naturally speaking. And this is why you'll hear the often repeated thing in refutation of the idea that the church is necessary for salvation. Oh, I know a lot of non-Catholics who are better than any Catholic you could name. Probably do. You probably do. But that's not the point. That's not the point at all. Nevertheless, by the same token, where you were born, where you're raised, who you come up among, where you find yourself, that is what determines, I think, your field of mission work. Unless, of course, you become a priest and go into the missions.
Related question. One of the things that they do that I admire is their twice annual church-wide general conference. They gather to sing, pray, and give talks. I think they got it from the Methodists.
Yeah.
Is this something that Catholics could do or do already? Seems like a great way to gather the church together, after liturgy, of course. Or is it too Protestant for Catholics to do? I also love their architecture, from the historic temples to their meeting houses. Some of them remind me of mid-century modern for some reason. Is there any place in Catholicism for, quote, 4 bare walls and a Eucharist, end quote? Don't get me wrong, I love Baroque churches, etc., but I do enjoy the modern and simple. Are there orders in the church that practice this simplicity in their church design?
Oof, well, those are several questions, not just one. So let's go back to the first one. What was it again?
The general conference thing. Is that a good idea?
Well, actually, we do already have several things like that. One is the famous parish mission, which you may or may not recall used to be a feature of Catholic Church life. There'd be an annual mission over a week, and a missionary priest, very often a Redemptorist, would come, and every night he would preach a mission to the parish and say things that the parish priest couldn't say, like, stop being drunks and stuff. And, but it was a big social event as well as a religious one. There were pilgrimages. These were big things. And of course, see, Catholic events like that were not usually just campouts. They were processions. So you had the rogation days. 3 days, the procession would go around the boundaries of the parish and then end up with a big fiesta. The Saints' Day of the parish or the town. There'd be pilgrimages to nearby shrines. This is all stuff. The camp meeting, which is you correctly allude to as being where the Mormons got it from the Methodists, the camp meeting. That was the spiritualists also, far more esoterically minded, have their camp meetings too, again picked up from the Methodists. And the Chautauqua movement, which is non-denominational but very uplifting in New York, all of them harkening back to the camp meeting movement. We had these things long before the Methodists were doing camp meetings. And this is why it's so important I think, for the priest in a parish to look at everything about the parish to see what can be done to generate this kind of stuff. The parish feast day, the rogation days, Corpus Christi processions, all this stuff. If you let the liturgical year do its job, we have very much the equivalent of a camp meeting, believe me.
All right. If we ever convert enough Mormons, would we have to demolish the temples, or could we gut them and convert them to Catholic use? Sorry for the long one. I hope it leads to a good discussion. Thank you and God bless.
Well, it did, to answer your question, so thanks. But as far as that goes, yeah, of course we could use them. I mean, mosques, pagan temples, all sorts of things have been used, have become Catholic churches. The other question about four walls and the Eucharist, been there, done that. I'm not really a fan. In terms of simplicity and architecture, yeah, the Cistercians were renowned for having very, very, very plain churches. You wouldn't know them here in Austria. The Cistercians do not have plain churches, but they do in most places.
I think you're biased against plain, simple churches because of Cardinal Mahoney.
No, I disliked them long before Cardinal Mahoney.
Oh, okay.
St. Basil on Wilshire Boulevard was what turned me off. See, when Cardinal McIntyre was my confessor, I would go there every week. And that's kind of an interesting story because it was the ugliness of the church that drew me inside. No joke. I was walking home from Daniel Murphy High School one day along Wilshire Boulevard, and I look, and there I see, for some reason, it never really caught my eye. I must have been passed 1,000 times. And the old St. Basil's was a pretty church. You can see it Stations of the Cross and the crypt of the cathedral now. Anyway, so I'm walking by, and there's this cyclopean structure. And it said St. Basil Roman Catholic Church on the outside. And I was like, so I walked across, I went inside, and in the vestibule, this little girl had fallen on her rear end, and this old priest in a cassock with a chain was helping her up. And then I see a sign saying James Francis Cardinal McIntyre in residence. So I went up to the old priest and I said, "Excuse me, Father, does Cardinal McIntyre live here?" And he looked at me and he said, "Well, I hope so. I'm Cardinal McIntyre." And I said, "Oh." So I looked at the ring and I dropped down to one knee and kissed it. And I said, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Your Eminence." And he said, "Well, looks like you've been brought up."
Wow.
And so then he started asking me questions. He says, "Where do you go to school?" I said, "Daniel Murphy." "Oh, Daniel Murphy. Let me ask you, kid, how many elephants did Hannibal bring over the Alps?" 500. When did the Roman Empire fall? 476 AD. Oh, yeah? How about Constantinople? 1453. Oh. So tell me, if I had $500, how would I compound 10% interest? I have no idea, Your Eminence. Well, we see where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, but you got a brain in your head. Why don't you come back next week? Then we'll have a chat. So I said, all right. So I did. And when I did, he gave me a book, which I still have, called Christ Among Us. No, it's not Christ Among Us, gosh. No, it was called Christ and His Mysteries by Dom Columba Marmion, which has been a standby of mine ever since. And that began a long adventure all in itself. But I would never have gone over if that church had not been so ugly.
Oh, okay, what I'm going to do is, let's see, I'm going to share the screen, firstly for you, just so you can see it, and then I'm going to add it so everyone can see. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. That is it. In the foreground is a used outside, I don't know what it is. It's a print set or something. That used to be a copper penny restaurant for our Southern California nostalgia fans.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Let's see. Do that. Are we still screen sharing? No. Okay.
No, you're hogging the screen now.
Yeah. Good.
Stop sharing.
I just very recently added Our Way in Our Life, Christ in His Mysteries by Blessed Coulombe Marmion. Guess who published it, Charles?
Who?
It's Angelical Press. I added a bunch of Angelical Press books, and we sell
Angelical
it now.
Press.
Isn't that interesting? They have a bunch of his books. Yeah, you'll be happy to know.
Angelical Press. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that Christ in His Mysteries was the first book that Cardinal McIntyre gave me, and the immortal Brother Leonard Mary of happy memory, big fan as well, and was when I first met him was amazed that I knew Dom Coulombe Marmion. So let me recommend Dom Marmion, and particularly Christ in His Mysteries. Cardinal McIntyre swore by it, and he knew what he was doing.
We also have a couple others that also from Angelical Press by Coulombe Marmion. Christ, the Life of the Soul, which is a bigger book.
That's the sequel.
Oh, yeah, that's twice the size, 384 pages. And then With Christ, an anthology of the writings of Blessed Coulombe Marmion. So that sounds like, okay. I guess he wrote another book called The Ideal of the Monk, it seems like, which is
Christ the
Ideal of the Monk, yeah.
Yeah. If you're going to go on I would actually read them in that order if I were you.
And then it also has, that anthology includes his letters in union with God and personal notes on his own spiritual life, focused on the theme of suffering and sharing in the passion of our Lord. Truth be told, I'm not doing this purely a plug, but because of Charles's enthusiasm, he's been on my to read list for a long time. Because I believe Garanger references him a lot. Is that true?
No. He was after Garanger.
Oh, I don't know why I put the two in my mind for some reason. I'm not sure why that is.
Well, they're both Benedictines, and of course, Dom Garanger refounded the Benedictines in France, and Dom Marmion was the most famous one in Belgium, and so he let's just say he was sort of a spiritual grandson, I guess you would say, of Dom Garanger.
Okay, here you go. All right, a question from Robert.
All right.
Question for Charles on landowners and the peerage. Greetings, gentlemen.
Okay.
A glorious Eastertide to you all. I read Charles's article titled Quest for the Catholic State on the Tumblr House website. I'm interested in one of Latour de Pins' principle that peerage or the aristocracy should be based on hereditary land ownership. Why is the peerage most apt for landowners and not, say, capital owners of today? What does it mean when Latour de Pins said that his landowning aristocracy shared sovereignty with the monarch, I presume? If a democratic republic with abolished aristocracy were to reform its commonwealth to a more traditional state, would it mean that a peerage can be formed by just incorporating all landowners? And would land mean all real property, real estate, including condo units or apartment flats?
Wow, that's a lot. Well, firstly, Latour du Pin was, of course, himself a nobleman and a landowner, and a very attentive landowner, not just to his estate, but to the people on it and around it. So he knew wherever he wrote. The thing is that traditionally the nobility of Europe They were land-based. That was where their power came from. That was who they were, literally. In certain countries, in Austria and Germany and Britain, they did, in fact, expand the peerage to include bankers, industrialists, people like that, soldiers, of course. But La Tour du Pin was of the opinion that landowners were of their nature much closer to the people than industrialists or bankers or soldiers. Unless, of course, they got settled on land. So, at the risk of sounding too 60s-ish for you, I suppose he felt they were more organic in the sense of being more closely tied to the country itself. Now, as to the latter questions, if we had a more traditional state, would it include all that? I don't know. One size doesn't fit all. Never does, never has. We'd just have to see how it developed.
Okay. Final question for today.
All right.
It's from my namesake, Vincent. He says, can you talk about who Vladimir Solovyov was and his way into Catholicism? If so, do so, please. By the way, my patron saint is also St. Vincent Ferrer, and don't forget him, Sir Charles. There we go. The Vincents are rising up.
Oh, ho. Fine. So you've got St. Vincent Ferrer, the angel of the apocalypse. Yeah, think I didn't know that. I did. That's what he called himself, because he felt the end of the world was nigh. St. Vincent of Saragossa, St. Vincent de Paul. You happy now?
I'm very happy. I think most people are named after St. Vincent Ferrer, to be honest. I mean, St. Vincent de Paul, what Italian's going to name their kid after a French saint?
Any nice one?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. No.
How about Mel Ferrer?
I don't even know who that is. That sounds very familiar.
Is an actor. I think he's dead now.
It sounds like an old-world Hollywood situation.
He was the son of Jose Ferrer and Rosemary Clooney.
Did they also spawn George Clooney? No.
No, George Clooney was her nephew.
Really?
Yeah. Remember, we hate the hereditary principle in Hollywood, which is why everything is so interrelated.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, we hate the hereditary principle, but literally everything in California is based on the hereditary principle.
Oh, yeah? You tell that to Nancy Pelosi's nephew, Governor Newsom. So, Vladimir Solovyov, well, now you talk about esoteric types. Vladimir Solovyov was definitely one of those, and he's very popular among them. Why? Well...
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm so poorly learned in this area. I don't even know exactly what esoteric is. So can you start with what's esoteric in this sense?
I sure can. Esoteric in this sense means hidden, not for the masses, inner teachings, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
It has some connection to Gnosticism and Gnosis, and the idea that there was one set of teachings for the hoi polloi and another for the elect, for the illumined. So you have the idea of the exoteric teachings and the esoteric teachings. Now, it's not an idea that a Catholic can hold.
Yeah, I always assumed. I always assumed it was some weird secular religion.
Well, it's not secular.
or something.
It's the opposite of secular. I can assure you that. But it is the idea that, and it bleeds off into a lot of other things. Traditionalism, and by that I don't mean Catholic traditionalism, but in the past I've been asked about Rene Guénon and all those guys.
Yeah, these people with asterisks by their name.
Them guys.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of traditionalism holds basically that there was an esoteric tradition in each faith that's a remnant of some original revelation and so on. So esoteric has come to mean any teaching that is not for the masses, for the group, but the secret special teachings only for the few.
So that's kind of like Gnosticism, one sense of Gnosticism.
Well, it does, but see, there again, Gnosticism is an extremely elastic term.
Well,
What
that's
does
why I
it
said
come
one
from?
sense. I mean, that's Gnosticism in one sense.
Yeah, I mean, well, see, the thing basically comes down to this. Gnosticism held that there was a saving knowledge, a gnosis cardias, a knowledge of the heart, that you had to know in order to be saved. Now, even what that salvation was a question, because for some variants, it was just going to heaven.
Yeah.
But for those of a dualist bent, that is, people who felt that the physical was evil and the spiritual was good, the two God theory,
Yeah.
dualism. For people like that, the salvation that the Gnosis offered was escape from the prison of the flesh.
Yeah.
Now, then again, some Gnostics believed in reincarnation, some did not. I mean, it's almost like Protestantism in that you can find anything you want under that name. And to make things even more murky, and I'm all for that, I guess, St. Clement of Alexandria defined real Gnosticism as being Orthodox Catholicism,
What?
being the saving knowledge that you had to know.
But
Well, see, it's
that's
not as
weird because
bizarre.
that's not elitist, though. You know what I mean? Like we kind of mentioned that where it's such basic information in basic.
Well, I know that, but don't forget that's for us. When he was writing before the Edict of Milan, the faith was under sporadic persecution.
Mm.
And that was the time when the church's doctrines, like the Blessed Sacrament, didn't use the word, but transubstantiation, the real presence, those were hidden. The disciplina arcani, the discipline of the secret.
I see.
You didn't know about that till you were baptized. You see, in its earliest days, Orthodox Catholicism and Gnosticism looked very similar, which is why it became very difficult for some people to tell them apart.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Sorry for
and
the Yeah. Go on.
the tangent. Well, no, but I mean, especially in the light of all the amusements of this past week, these are interesting. It's good to know stuff. You
Yeah.
know, if you know stuff, you don't sound stupid.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you want to use the right term and the right phrase. But where was I? Yeah, so Vladimir Solovyov is very much loved by these esoteric types because he wrote extensively on a theme that is interesting to them, which is the idea of holy wisdom, Sophia, the divine wisdom. You remember that the cathedral in Constantinople was called the Hagia Sophia.
Yes, of course.
Well, that wasn't named after some Saint Sophia, of whom there have been several. It was named after the holy wisdom of God, the divine wisdom, which takes us back to Gnosis. Get it? Gnosis meaning wisdom.
I see.
So, I mean, these things go back and forth and feed into each other, and your head will spin if you let it. That's why I always say, remember the four creeds. There's the Nicene Constantinopolitan, which we call Nicene, the Apostles, the Athanasian, and then the Creed of Pius IV. You need to believe those four.
Yeah.
And so, when you find yourself wandering off in the fields and reading all sorts of different stuff, you have the creeds to run everything by. That's how you determine whether or not something is orthodox. Now, mind you, it might be in something that isn't really covered by the creed. So, things like whether or not there are people living on the other side of the ocean, that doesn't enter into it. But anything that contradicts the creed, we cannot believe, because it wouldn't be in the creed unless it were true. To put this another way, something isn't true because the church teaches it. The church teaches it because it's true.
Yeah.
That's an important thing. Anyway, so with Soloviev, that's why a lot of esoteric folk find him very interesting. Also, he wrote a lot of intriguing stuff. Remember what I told you about a lot of them being very well educated?
Yeah.
And he certainly appeals to well educated people. But that wasn't all. He was, as one biography calls him, the Russian Newman. because in his studies he came to realize that Orthodoxy, as it was split off and basically mummified, being cut off from the Holy See. The book he wrote, which you can find online, is called, in English, Russia and the Universal Church. And it is a very, very insightful book. You will understand the East a lot better. And you'll understand the West a lot better, too, frankly. He was a great believer in the reunion of not just of Russia and Orthodoxy with the West, but he hoped and believed that if the Tsar reunited with the Pope, he could become the great defender of the church like Charlemagne.
I just had this image just jump into my head where I don't know why, because I guess we're talking about all these different entities that kind of don't quite agree, like Sedevacantists, Orthodox, and for some reason the image just popped into my head. How incredible would it be if the Pope called for a crusade? Again, against China. China. There we go. I'm gonna say China. A crusade against China to save those. Those Catholics, those persecuted Catholics in China. And okay, the Pope calls a crusade against China, and the Orthodox answer, and the Sedevacantists are like, oh wow, okay, this Pope means business. I don't know their situation so well. Like, what would they need for a Pope for the seat to be held again? That's.
I don't know. I really don't know.
But
see, that's
yeah.
I've asked friends of mine who say to Vacantis, how can this end? And they say, well, God will end it when He's ready. Oh, okay.
What does that look like? What are they looking for? You know what I mean?
I don't know.
But
I don't know.
But how amazing would that be if all the forces combined, like the might of Christendom?
That'd be great.
That would be that would give me goosebumps. Actually, just the thought of that gives me goosebumps. And it's like all the forces of evil, their jaw just dropped. It's like when the riders of Rohirrim go there, and then the orcs are like, and it's like, oh whoa, this changes everything now. This changes everything. We're scared.
It does.
Now we're the scared ones. Now we're the hunted ones.
Well, that happened in real life, and it wasn't very, very unlike Minas Tirith. See, the funny thing about the Siege of Gondor is that in the beginning of the book, or not the book, but the beginning of Return of the King, they have all of the armies coming in to Minas Tirith and getting ready for the big siege. And at that point, it's like the Siege of Constantinople in 1453, when the city fell to the Turks. But fast forward, the Rohirrim come out of the north, and they're like the Poles and the Jan Sobieski breaking the siege of Vienna in 1683. And you could imagine what the people in the besieged city of Vienna must have felt like when they heard the horns of the Poles blowing. And the Turks were astonished, and they ran. And that, incidentally, is why we have coffees and croissants today here.
Yeah, good old coffee and croissant.
That's right. It's actually no joke. It is an enduring memory of the Siege of Vienna.
That's still funny though, because so wait, the Turks brought us both coffee and croissant?
Well, yes and no. They brought us coffee. The croissants were made crescents.
Yeah.
In memory of the Turkish defeat.
But see, I would love to know the inner workings of that and how that actually worked. Like, did they have some prisoner and they're interrogating the prisoner? Like, tell us all you know. Tell us all your culinary secrets. Like, okay, fine, okay, I'll tell you. I'll tell you how we do croissants and coffee.
Well, he didn't tell how to do croissants, but he told them how to do coffee. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
That's why the Vienna Coffee House is the center of. This is where it all began. So if you're ever fortunate enough to come to Vienna and you sit in one of the great cafes of the city, you take your first sip of coffee. You'll know if you're a coffee fan, you've come home.
Wow. Wow. Hmm. It's basically the mecca of coffee people.
Yeah, the mecca of coffee people.
You know, I mean, how good can coffee and croissants be, though? You know what I mean?
Oh, so good.
When was the last time you went to Vienna Coffee House? I mean, you're right
Back in,
there.
yeah, well, unfortunately, Mr. COVID has everything shut down. So the last time would probably have been in September or October.
Oh, that's not too long ago.
No. And the coffee, well, actually, I was at the Cafe Vest today and I had a cup of coffee. So this was, but it's not a Vienna coffee house. So, no, but it has been hard, the lockdown here, but we manage. We manage.
Okay, let's close it on up, Charles. It's been a long
Oh,
episode, over 2 hours long. This week we've had over 3 hours of content. Can you believe that? We did like over an hour long pre-show. If you're still somehow with us after all of this and you're not a patron and you want more, oh, that patron subscription is just waiting for you for as low as $5 a month.
oh, golly Moses.
So much
Well,
good stuff.
let's be sure to get it. And remember, $25 or more. Free shipping and handling.
That's right, on the Tumblr House website. All those wonderful books by Blessed Columba Marmion, they're waiting for you. We still have a bunch of Vulnerary of Christ. We finally got the Catechism of Trent back in. It was on back order for so long because that book has been... I'm talking to the publisher Baronius Press. They just can't keep it on the shelves. They keep ordering more and more, and the Catechism of Trent is getting so popular. I mean, I had to get on the phone. I was like, guys, this is costing us thousands of dollars, the fact that you don't have it for 3 months, okay? Let's get it in print. Let's make a lot of money. Let's go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not that we wanted to sound mercenary or anything. Oh, heavens. Well, okay. I guess you made them an offer they couldn't refuse. Eh, Don Vincenzo?
That's right. That's right.
Well, there's one last thing I should say before we close up about Jersey. Uncle Giovanni used to say that Jersey did have one important use.
What is that? A garbage dump? What?
We sort of.
What?
Not exactly garbage, but a dump of sorts. You see, you got to understand, some people, they go to Jersey, but they don't come back.
Oh, I get it. Okay. Yeah.
Well, he warned me. He said that's why you don't want to go running around parts of Jersey because you don't know what you'll find.
Yep. Poor old, oh, what's his name? I forgot his name. He's such a... Charles, you know this so well. Whose body can't they find?
Oh, Jimmy Hoffa.
It's Jimmy Hoffa. Yeah, in New Jersey.
Poor Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah.
You know what thing your uncle told me?
What?
I did not see that man the last week of his life.
Okay.
Which I'm sure was true.
I'm sure it's true. I mean, his word is as strong as oak.
Yep, he never lied to me. Never once. And that reminds me of one other thing was the disappearance of Judge Crater, but that's a story we'll save for another time.
Yes, that's right. Are there any more famous disappearances?
Oh heavens!
Well, Natalie
Earhart.
Wood.
Natalie, well,
Wait,
we know
did they get her body?
Vanish. Amelia Earhart, they never got her body. They got Natalie Wood's body.
They did get Natalie Wood's body? Oh,
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I just thought it might be lost in the ocean or something.
No, they got her, but Amelia Earhart vanished.
Oh, did she? I didn't even know that. Wow.
Oh, it's one of the great mysteries.
What was she doing?
Flying an airplane with her partner, her flight partner, and The theory is that she landed on some Japanese-held island and came to a bad end,
Wow,
but
I
nobody
did not
knows.
know that. I can't believe I'm embarrassed for not knowing that.
It's one of the great mysteries. There was another
Hmm.
one, a British ambassador or something in Germany in the 1810s who vanished from an inn. He was seen to get on a horse and not get off it.
Hmm.
A lot of weird things in the world.
I feel like there's a lot more that we're missing, but
Yeah, the income tax for one of them.
the income tax. What are you talking about?
We're always missing the income tax. You know that.
I'm not missing the income tax. I've had to pay a lot of taxes. More money, more
Oh,
problems. It's
I
ridiculous.
don't miss it at all.
What are you talking about?
The income tax.
How
The
could you
money
miss
that
the
goes
income
into
tax
it,
if you're getting in if you're being subject to the income tax? How could you miss
because
it?
the money that they take, I miss.
I don't know what you're saying. You're saying
I miss
words.
the money that when the income tax people take the money from me. I miss the
Oh,
money
you
when it
missed that
leaves.
money. Got it.
Yeah, I miss the income tax money. I miss it very much.
Oh, that's right. We're near the deadline. April 15th. Get your taxes done.
Oy,
This Thursday.
God help us. All
All
right.
right.
Well, on that happy note, you got any questions for me?
No, we just went through all the questions, Charles. Oh, yeah, I do have questions. Yeah. If it's Monday, what is it?
It's off the menu.
But what about the soul you save?
After some consideration of the topic, I have come to the considered conclusion that it is, in all likelihood, your own.
See you next time, everyone.
Take care, gang, and remember those prayers.